Right, okay, folks. So we're going to take a look today at how to drive the Franna on the road. So before we even start moving, there's a couple of things I want to discuss. So before you drive it on the road, one of the first things you need to do is make sure you check the emergency steering. So in order to check the emergency steering, what you can do is you can take your park brake off, and if you hit your restop, right, you'll hear the alarm go, and you should still be able to steer it. Because what you don't want to happen while you're driving down the road is have the motor cut out and then have no steering at all. So you always want to make sure that's working correctly. All right, so that seems to be working. So we'll get her in the guts again. All right, now when we're driving on the road, first up, we want to make sure that we've got the hook block taken off. All right, so you've got no hook block on. Keep your boom rather parallel to the crane, and then we're good to go. So you take the park brake off, put it into drive, and away we go. Right. Now, whenever you're driving the Franna, always steer with one hand, because what you'll find is when you're driving with two hands, you're always constantly fighting each other. And if you start fishtailing, you're going to make everything a lot worse. So what you need to keep in mind is as you come up to any intersections or driveways, you've got that great big long boom hanging out in front of you. So you've got to come out nice and gently and start, when you're steering the crane, steer the hook block, don't steer the crane. Because what you want to do is keep following that hook block. So you come down nice and gentle, right? And you start turning. Now you've got to remember, the Franna won't return to centre, so as soon as you get it lined up, start bringing your steering wheel back, right? You need to turn it in and out of the corners because that is not going to return to centre. A couple of things to remember about a Franna, is especially in these colder climates down here in Victoria, is the demister doesn't work too well, and the wipers on these aren't the best either. So it's always a good idea to give your windscreen a good cleaning before you start travelling in the morning as well. If you're relying on the demister, it's going to be a pretty hard travel for you. Right? Keep enough distance away from the car in front that your hook block's not going to go over their car as well. Coming up in section, start turning as you come into it, and remember that hook block out the front. Now you've got to remember, they're a big heavy machine and they're not going to take off as fast as your car. So make sure you get yourself thinking through. And your indicators won't necessarily always turn off, so don't get to that. As you can see, we're coming up to a red light. Just start easing off the throttle. Don't drive up and start hitting the brakes. It is, again, a big heavy machine. Take your foot off and let it run down into it. On that road, you don't need to worry too much about your engine braking. But if it's hilly country, you use your engine braking a bit more. So remember to steer into the corner and steer out of it. Again, don't drive right up to the white line because you don't want your boom sticking out past that as well. So just take it as far as your hook block, pretty much level with that white line. Blah, 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 blah. So as we're driving back, I'd just like to thank my cameraman, Scott Daly. He's another trainer I work with. If you want a bit more information on training, you can always pop at Scott's website as well, SD Construction Training, and you can check his website out as well. Right, so he's got a bit of information on developing courses as well. So as we come up to the driveway that we pull into, you'll find a lot of people do have a tendency to swing out onto the other side of the road. However, these things do turn pretty sharply, so you don't need to go out on the other side of the road. Just turn it in. There is a bit of an incline here. So you just gently roll up. Just get that a little bit more accelerated. So here we are back at the home base. So just one quick thing I'd like to mention before we do. As I said, always keep in mind, always steer with one hand. The thing is, when you're steering it, what you want to be careful of is this handle here, because when you're turning it fast, if your fingers are out like that, you will find out that it can do a lot of damage to your finger. All right, so always be mindful of that hand there. It does happen a lot, so try and keep your fingers away from that as you're steering it. If you've driven any other type of articulating vehicle, you'll notice how much more you will have to steer this as opposed to your average articulating vehicle. And that all has to do with the length of the boom, because when you're lining up to a load, you don't want the boom to move too fast with a flip of turn. So it's got that big, long turning circle in it. All right, so I hope that helps. So remember, whenever you're driving on the road, you need to have the appropriate truck license for it. And you also should be trained in the use of a Franna. It's not like a car, so don't expect to jump in it and drive it like you do a car. Always make sure you're trained properly before you do try driving any machine. Because if you remember rightly, before you do any task you're unfamiliar with, your employer must provide you with information, training, supervision, and instruction. Right, so keep that in mind. It's not like your average car, it is completely different. A couple of other things I'd like to mention is, especially in older models, traveling downhill or starting to get a bit of speed up, they will start fishtailing down the road. If they start fishtailing, it's not like a truck. If you're in a truck and the trailer starts to wobble, you increase speed to pull it straight. If you try doing that in the Franna, you'll find it's going to make it worse as you go. So you need to wash your speed off slowly. So first instinct, take your foot off the accelerator. If it doesn't start slowing down because you're going downhill, gently touch your brake, don't hit it too harshly. Right? And also remember, when you're trying to stop it from fishtailing, don't do it with two hands. You're going to make it worse by fighting each other. Right? So slow down gently on the brake and use one hand to correct it. Don't overcorrect it because you will only make it worse. All right, so that's about it for now. If you need anything else, leave something in the comments section. All right, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for your time.